And welcome to the paper of the week. My name is Steve Eddy, naturopath, and I'm going to be talking to you about a wonderful scientific paper every week, and this week is no exception. This one we're going to be focusing on the brain. The brain is an interesting organ, and a lot of it we don't know what's going on in the brain most of the time, and in fact we can formulate thoughts. I'm formulating a sentence now, but there are certain diseases of the brain which are still a little bit of a mystery to us. There's still a lot we know about it, but a lot we don't know. And what I want to focus on today is migraines. Now, what is a migraine? You've probably heard of it. It is worse than a headache. It is different to a headache because you can get nauseous. You can get a condition called photophobia, which means you're technically afraid of light. And that's when these people have to basically cover their eyes because the light is horrendous. Now, light can make a headache worse too, but this is photophobia. This is a lot worse. And also, of course, it's not relieved by common painkillers. So a headache, you'll feel a bit better after a paracetamol or a Nurofen, or both, a Neuromol if you want to combine them both. And so these migraines are very different. They can last for days, and they're vastly more superior. So what's going on with a migraine? Well, what we do know about migraines is that it's multifactorial. In other words, lots of things can cause it. The first thing we know that can cause migraines is stress. Now, stress can cause migraines by changing the blood vessels in your brain. In fact, they constrict when you get a lot of adrenaline going around your body, and it constricts the blood vessels, increases blood pressure. That can cause a migraine. There are other triggers, other things we know about migraines too. Certain foods and certain situations you're in can cause migraines. Another thing we know about migraines is there's a change in certain chemicals in the brain, and one of those is serotonin. And that's been targeted heavily with migraines. And if your serotonin levels are abnormal in your brain, you can also get a condition called depression. So they are linked very much together. So today is a review, and the paper is called The Exploration of Mechanisms of Comorbidity Between Migraine and Depression. In other words, the two are intertwined. And we know this starting back from 1990, where there was a study that showed that these two things are very well linked, and it's very well established that moods have a lot to do to it. So I guess we should start with who gets migraines. Well, basically, it is a lot higher in women than men, about 3 times higher in women than men. And, of course, women have to put up with men, so that's probably why they get the migraines. But there's more to it than that, because this hormone estrogen, this neurotransmitter hormone estrogen modulates the amount of serotonin you've got going on in your brain. So if your estrogen levels fluctuates too much, then that can cause the level of serotonin to change in your brain, which can cause mood changes and can cause migraines, because serotonin changes can cause migraines as well. So that's one thing. Also, progesterone levels, when they change, that can change the level of serotonin in your brain. And this is associated with conditions you may be familiar with, such as PMS and those sorts of things. So what we know about these hormones is they're intimately linked with depression and migraines. There's a beautiful chart here, which will be overlaid, use the magic of camera, which shows how estrogen changes serotonin in the brain. I'll hold it up there very briefly there, but basically that shows you how estrogen changes serotonin in your brain and another chemical called norepinephrine or noradrenaline if you're in America. There is another chart here showing how serotonin changes can cause migraines. And one of the main treatments for migraines is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or an MAO, a monoamine oxidase inhibitor drug, and they normalize the level of serotonin in the brain. So what does this mean? Well, for natural medicine, things we can do to boost serotonin levels in the brain, there's 5-hydroxytryptophan. People take hypericum as a great chemical to normalize serotonin in the brain, and of course avoiding stressful situations. So there's lots of things we can do for migraine headaches. Now, one of the key things that we've also found is that people with migraines have a polymorphism in a gene that's very popular in natural medicine called the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene, 677 allele. And it's quite a common polymorphism. So that leads to elevated levels of homocysteine. And higher levels of homocysteine can trigger migraines as well. So one thing we can do about that, of course, is to eat your folate-rich foods, which is your leafy greens and your vegetables and fruits and those sorts of things that can boost your folate levels, of course, with things like multifood. So that's something you may want to interact, because side effects of high homocysteine have other problems associated with it well, such as heart disease and Alzheimer's. So if you're getting migraines, look at serotonin levels and also look at homocysteine levels and check your hormone levels. That could be absolutely, related. Now, the paper goes on to talk about the different relationships between depression and migraines. And unfortunately, what the paper talks about is that it alludes to the fact that a lot of people with depression and migraines, they used to think that they were sort of not faking it, but exaggerating the effect because depression. But there's both a biochemical relationship between the both, which is a chemical in the brain called serotonin. And as I've said, serotonin is changed with hormones in your body. And of course, the changing hormones in a woman means that women get more migraines than men. So that's a real thing and something we need to be careful of. So how many women get migraines? About 10%, which is very, very high. It's about 2 to 3% for a male. So this is very, very interesting stuff. So what can we do about it? Again, keep your vitamins and nutrients up. Magnesium, another thing that helps normalize serotonin in the brain. It also regulates your blood vessels. So magnesium, another thing you may want to consider taking to normalize migraine headaches. Other things you can do is keep stress out of your life, and if stress triggers in, take supplements to reduce stress. And of course, get your hormone levels checked. They're very, very important. And when you get a migraine, it's not the worst thing in the world to take a painkiller. As long as you address the causes, you can still treat acutely using powerful drugs if you need to, because these things can be very debilitating and awful to get. So keep that in mind. Homocysteine, serotonin in the brains, and your hormones. Keep those three things in mind when you're considering a migraine, and hopefully you can avoid ever getting them. So thank you very much.